Privilege to introduce retired Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Robert D. Gaylor. Along with his 31 years of distinguished service, Chief Gaylor was an honor graduate of the Air Force Non-Commissioned Officer School at Barksdale Air Force Base. In February of 1970, he became the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the 2nd Air Force. He later established the United States Air Force European Command and Management and Leadership Center and continued as an NCO in charge of the center until selection as USAID Senior Enlisted Advisor in August of 1973. In September of 1974, Chief Gaylor was assigned to the Air Force Military Personnel Center, where he traveled extensively as a management and leadership instructor. In 1977, he became the 5th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, the highest enlisted level of leadership available within the Air Force. After retiring in 1979, Chief Gaylor taught, coached, and mentored leaders at all levels for USAA, a Fortune 500 company. In 2006, the NCO Academy at Lackland Air Force Base was named the Robert D. Gaylor NCO Academy in his honor. Now, back in August of last year, I actually had the privilege of meeting Chief Gaylor at the Air Force Sergeants Association's annual dinner in San Antonio. Along with meeting Chief Gaylor, I was privileged to meet the Secretary of the Air Force, the Supreme Allied Commander, and the current Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, James Cody. And now, Chief Cody gave a speech that night, and his excellent speech is an indication of how awesome of a speaker the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force is, then well, I know that we're definitely in for a treat tonight. So, Chief Gaylor, I'd like to invite you up.
Thank you. My goodness, I had forgotten that. Thank you for reminding me of that. I like coming out here. This is my 3rd year of standing in front of the Greystone group, and I look forward to it each year. What is amazing to me, I had not heard of the program until I came here 2 years ago. Now I hear about it in my travels. It's rather notoriously famous. It's somewhat of a surprise that people have heard of the program. And I guess before, when I heard of it, I must have just passed it off. But now when I hear of it, of course, I can say that I have been out here and that I come out here. So thank you for inviting me back. Mr. Parks, where are you? What happened today?
I earned my appointment, sir.
Huh?
I earned my appointment today.
Whoa.
Yes, sir.
Whoa, congratulations. I don't know if you know it, it was on CNN. We interrupt this program to give you this announcement. Mr. Parks has been selected to attend the Academy. Yeah. If you believe that, you believe they found that jet in the Never done so well with this. He mentioned Chief Cody, a very good friend of mine. I've known Jim for 12 years. Jim is number 17. I was number 5, so I'm a part of Air Force history. I am now the senior breathing Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. For whatever distinction that is. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are dead. And fortunately, we don't have to die in order. That would scare me. Unfortunately, number 7 and number 10 are also deceased. So of the 17 of us, there are 11 of us, the one in the job now, and then 10 of us that are in retirement status. And so I still travel throughout the Air Force. I've been 9 bases this year. And in a week, I'll be at Grand Forks, North Dakota. I need a new travel agent. Somebody in North Dakota in the winter months, but I'm looking forward to that. Congratulations for what's going on in your life. It's got to be exciting. And the reputation of the program here is so great that I would say your future looks very bright. Going back 2 years ago, I stood up here and I told a couple of the stories that I tell about putting your name on the mailbox and people like hot French fries. I had not planned to tell those stories tonight, but I will say the hot fries story is on TEDx. And they know how to call it up. So if you are interested in watching that, it's an 18-minute presentation titled A Motto for Life. And I talk about people like hot French fries. Then last year, I spoke about 14 powerful F words. Have any of you seen that talk on YouTube? Okay, so it's on YouTube if you want to see what I spoke about last year. And so I have a different talk this evening. I wanted to give a talk that I put together some years ago when I worked at USAA. You can see the title of it. I initially, if I can keep the frog out of my throat, I initially joined the Air Force in 1948. I came in on a 3-year enlistment and ended up staying 31 years. And so I guess I'm what you call a career airman. Somewhere along the way, I became a student of leadership. And I would suggest that if you are not a student of leadership, that you become one. Yeah, because I'm going to tell you something that I believe to be true. I'm sure that you want to be successful in life. Whatever your endeavor, you want to continue to move up. Am I correct? I would suggest to you that a demonstration of leader skill will advance you quicker than any other skill. I really believe that. Let's take a very difficult skill, brain surgeon, for example. Obviously, if you become a brain surgeon, you'll do well. Think how many brain surgeons there are, though, that are doing basically the same thing. I think if there's a commodity in America today, it's probably in the area of leadership. We need good leadership. So I would just suggest that you become a student of leadership. I would further suggest 2 questions that you look for answers to, if you will. They're simple questions, but I don't know if you'll ever find the total answer because I'm still looking. But here are the questions. Question number 1, what is it that an effective leader does that makes them effective? What is it that an effective leader does that makes them effective? In my travels, people say to me, oh, I'm working for a great leader. The leader I'm working for now is very effective. And I say, really, what is it the leader does? What is it the leader does that makes them effective? That's a great question. What do effective leaders do that makes them effective? And question number 2, you probably figured out. What is it that ineffective leaders do or don't do that makes them ineffective? And I can guarantee you there are a lot of ineffective leaders in key positions that are not doing a very good job of it. And so it just fascinated me when somebody says they have an effective leader. I want to know, what is it they do that makes them effective? Why do you say or suggest that they're effective? And if someone says to me, oh, I wish I was working for someone else. My leader is not very effective. I say, really? Why not? What is it the leader doesn't do? So those just some introductory comments to sort of get you to thinking about leadership. Now here you sit. I guess you're, I don't know, you're somewhere 19, 20, 21, 22 years old probably. Whether you realize it or not, you're putting your leader style together. It's happening somewhat automatically. Your leader style is being developed right now on a daily basis. And eventually you will develop and end up with a particular leader personality or style, if you will. It will be your manner and method of attempting to influence the behavior of others. And I would further suggest some of you will probably turn out to be great leaders, and some of you will be maybe average leaders, and a couple of you might even be ineffective leaders. I would hope not, but my goodness, it can surely happen. And so what I want to talk about tonight is leadership. Now here's what I've done, and believe it or not, I haven't seen these slides in several months, so I'm not sure what's coming up next. This should be exciting, huh? We'll find out together. I'll let you read that. That's just a comment. Obviously, I put this together for a talk I was given at an Air Force event. Matter of fact, there was a recruiting event in San Antonio. I believe this to be true. There's a greater need for effective leadership in America today than ever before. Start with the government in Washington. That'd be a good place to start. I think we see evidence of very ineffective leadership. People who are in critical key positions who can't seem to make the right decisions and cause people to respond in a positive manner. And I think obviously you're dealing with a much more educated workforce. You can no longer get by with saying do it because I said so. You've got to have your act together now if you expect people to be responsive to your attempt to lead them. So I just suggest the consequences are disastrous. If we don't get our act together pretty quickly in government, church systems, school systems, private enterprise, we're going to continue to have difficulties in America just getting the things done that we want to get done. So I just say this as a challenge to you to, as I say, to become a student of leadership and to become interested in leadership and to try to put together a style that eventually will be very effective for you, that people will want to work for you and want to be influenced by your style. Self-explanatory. Really, you ask, what do leaders do? What does the leaders do? And I imagine we could talk all night, but really, if you narrow down, for hundreds of years, this is what leaders have been trying to do. Number one, simply get things done, whatever the mission might be, achieve the goals. That's one thing leaders do. Second, train and maintain a highly motivated workforce. In its most simple fashion, that's what leaders attempt to do. And that includes parental leadership. What do mom and dads do? What is their goal? Well, trying to raise the family in the appropriate manner and to have a responsive family, if you will. So it's not that complicated what it is leaders are trying to do. What is interesting to me is how leaders have tried to do that. Over the years, the different techniques that leaders have tried, the different styles that they've thought that would be effective, that may or may not turn out to be. So here's what I've done now, and this is rather, if nothing else, the slides are attractive. I go back to 1950, and the clock is going to tick in 5-year increments. And what I'm going to show you in Bob Gaylor fashion is what I call the evolution of leadership in America. And what I want you to notice, if you will, is that each style that I'm going to talk about in the 5-year clip has both a strength and a weakness. So what I'm asking you to do as I talk about it is to attempt to capture what you consider to be the strength of that particular style, and then possibly identify what might be a potential weakness of that style. You'll catch on because it's not that difficult. Here we go. 1950, if I could take you back there, I stepped right smack into the middle of a very autocratic, authoritarian leadership posture. It had been widely used in World War II. Some of the generals became very famous. George Patton, you ever read about Old Blood and Guts? Yeah, George Patton, chrome helmet, pearl-handled pistols, shiny boots. He said, your job is not to die for your country. Your job is to convince that other stupid bastard to die for his country. That was George Patton. Stick with me, do what I tell you to do, and you'll get through the war okay. So it's a very power-oriented leader style, a very fear-oriented, do it because I said so. I can still remember things people said to me, my supervisor. Gaylor, when I say jump, both feet should leave the ground immediately. And stay up there until I tell you to come back down. Gaylor, count the stripes on my arm. Now count the stripes on yours. What did you notice? I've got more than you do. Now why do you suppose that is? Because I'm smarter than you. And so, my gosh, that was the style. Now I want you to, right now, think for a moment, what is the potential strength of this style? What is the good part of it? What can we capture from this? Well, it gets things done. People respond. My goodness, if you're being threatened, or if you're in fear, or you think something's going to happen to you, the odds are you'll do your best to carry it out. It works very well in crisis or emergency. At the scene of a fire, you get that that child out of that burning window or what have you. It also works good with untrained workers. You got workers who do not have the skill, that maybe need direction, need to be told what to do. So obviously it has some strength. So I would imagine what you would want to do would take a little bit of this style and include it in yours. That way, when you need it, it's available to you. Now, what is a potential weakness? It stifles creativity. The workers simply become responders. The workers say, why should I think? The boss will tell me what to do. It stifles decision learning. It stifles employee development. And so used inappropriately, I think you can see it would be quite ineffective. Used appropriately, people probably applaud. Wow, the boss really stepped up to it at the right time. Used inappropriately, people say, how do I get out of this outfit? And so it has both that strength and weakness. But I want you to appreciate this won World War II. This was a predominant style. And many who left World War II became Little League managers. Maybe you played baseball for one, who tried to use this style over the Little League baseball player. Okay, here's what happened now. We're going to take the clock. Along about 1950, World War II had ended. Supposedly there wasn't going to be any more war. And so professors began to take the stage on college campuses. Maybe you've heard their names, Abraham Maslow, Douglas McGregor, some of the great behaviorists of the early 1950s began to go on stage and talk about a different kind of leader behavior, if you will. Maslow basically said, you know what? You don't have to threaten people to get them to respond. If you provide for them and take care of them and treat them humanely and decently, they will probably respond in a positive way. And so we saw the introduction of what became known as the human relations approach. It had concern for the worker and support of the worker's needs. Basically what happened, instead of meeting the worker at the door and kicking them and saying, get to work, we hugged them and said, hi, how's Mary and the kids? Nice to have you working today. So we made a transition. It was somewhat gradual, but it was beginning to happen. That we don't need that autocratic style anymore. We can go to more of a human relations approach. What's the strength of this? People respond to it. Come on. You like to work for a leader who treats you decently, am I right? Who indicates some concern for you. How are you doing today? You're very important to me. You're very valuable in the workforce. I'm glad you're working for me. And you and I go, hey, I like this boss. The boss is nice. The boss would give me the shirt off the back. This type thing. Come on. It has a definite strength. What's the potential weakness? You may have footprints all over your body. Some people try to take advantage. You're too nice. Some people say, hey, we can get away with things. We can do things that we want to do contrary to what the boss wants us to do, and nothing happens to us. And so you know what happened? We entered into a war in Korea that we weren't prepared to fight. And we had problems in Korea we had never had before. We had prisoners of war who refused to be repatriated. They wanted to stay in Korea when the war ended. We had aiding of the enemy. We had a lot of soldiers and service members who were not behaving like they were supposed to do. So the downside of this, some people didn't know how to handle it. And some leaders went too far too quick and got carried away with it and became permissive and allowed people to get away with things. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the Korean War was the initiation of a code of conduct. All during World War II, we didn't have a code of conduct. But in Korea, we found a need for a code of conduct. If captured, I will behave in this manner. If captured, I will give only this information. If captured, I will not do this. And so part of the reason we needed that code of conduct was because we had gone too far too quickly. Take my word for it, it happened. So here you are now putting together a leadership style. And so now you've got a little bit of ability to be forceful if needed. You can make decisions, you get things done, you know how to respond in an emergency, but you're also a human leader. You care about people, you take care of people. Matter of fact, the motto is take care of the people, they'll take care of the mission. All right, so we could see now, looking at this, that we've got a strength-weakness situation. So guess what we did in 1960? We simply took the best of each down, put it together, and called it situational leadership. That was the transition that occurred. We just took the best of each of the two styles and sort of incorporated them together with emphasis on both productivity and people. Matter of fact, guess what happened? We changed the definition of leadership. From getting things done to getting things done with and through people. So we even began to change the definitions. And so the emphasis was on situational leadership. In other words, use the style that's most appropriate to the situation. Let's suggest that you've got a worker who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You've got a worker who's late for work frequently. What kind of leader style would you use? What would you do with that person? You'd probably call them in and say, what? You got to be to work on time. If you're not, something is going to happen to you. Now, let's say you've got another worker who's very productive, highly motivated, doing everything you want them to do. You wouldn't do that with them, would you? You would use a different style. You would reinforce it by saying, keep up the good work. I appreciate all you're doing and what have you. So it made sense to me that, what did I do? I must have pressed a button. It made sense to me, by the way, I was there for all of this. Meanwhile, I was going to class trying to keep up with the latest thing. I was trained as an authoritarian corporal. But along the way, I integrated some human relations training into my style. And when this came out in 1960, I went, wow, this is revolutionary, revelationary. This is new stuff. And then 1965. And it was fascinating. By then, we were entering into the Vietnam War that had become somewhat unpopular. And we were trying to define how should a leader be behaving. And we introduced equal rights, sensitivity, and empathy. In America, we had unrest. Go back and look at film footage. And you will see riots on campuses. And you will see fire hoses and snarling police dogs biting people in Montgomery, Alabama. And you would say, find people of color trying to sit at lunch counters they weren't allowed to sit at. And you would find a lady in Montgomery riding in the front of the bus instead of going to the back of the bus. And somebody looked around America and said, you know what? We are not understanding of other people's. The famous saying was, walk a mile in another person's moccasins. And this was totally new training. We had never been through anything like this before. We began to speak of equal rights, equal opportunity, understanding another person, sensitivity. I would ask you, are you a sensitive person? Do you really care about what happens to somebody else? Would you walk all over someone to get where you want to go? Would you stop and help someone along the way? How do you feel about a person who is different than you? Are you empathetic? Do you understand people? Do you reach out to them? I'm just asking rhetorical questions, trying my best to get you to think. What kind of a leader are you going to be? Where are you coming from? Are you going to be the style authoritarian? Or what are you putting into your style? I went to some of this training. I have to tell you about Montgomery, Alabama. I go into a room, I signed up for this program. I had no idea what it was. And so I get in the room, there's about 12 of us. And here's what the facilitator, Keep in mind now, not an instructor, a facilitator. I'd never heard that word. Wow, I've got a facilitator. What is that? I don't know, but I got one. Okay, here's what the facilitator said. Okay, here are the rules. While we're together, you cannot talk about anything outside of this room. You cannot talk about your job. You cannot talk about your hobbies. You cannot talk about your family. You cannot talk about any of those things because we're not interested. What you can talk about is what is going on in the room. You can talk about that all you want. You can only talk about what is happening in the room. So why don't we get started? And we sat there for 30 minutes, and nobody said anything. And finally, a guy said, "What are we supposed to be doing?" And the guy said, "What looks to me like you're doing it." And the guy said, "What am I doing?" And he said, "I don't know. What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm sitting here feeling stupid." And he said, "You want to talk about it?" And the guy said, "No." And he said, "You don't have to." And we sat for another 30 minutes and no one said anything. And he said, "Why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we'll pick up right where we left off." And we went out in the hall and we said, "What are we supposed to be doing?" They said, "I have no idea." And we went back in the room and we said to the facilitator, "Could we have an agenda?" He said, "Sure, make one up." That was sensitivity training. And believe me, listen to me now, they took ski lodges in Vermont and they converted them to T group training sessions. And industry paid thousands of dollars to send their executives off to become sensitized. And you came back to your job and you said, "Hi, I'm a different person than I was. I want to know more about you." And people went, "What in heaven's name is going on?" It became known as touchy-feely training. But it was an introduction to sensitivity, to try to appreciate the feelings of another. Have you noticed we came a long way from 1950? 1950, do it because I said so. When I said jump, both feet should leave the ground. And then we went, "Hi, Bill, how's marrying the kids?" Yeah, please don't forget the picnic on Saturday. And then we tried to become situational to try to make the style fit. And now we're into sensitivity and empathy. Huh? So how's your style doing? You're putting together a style. I'd like to see it 25 years from now. I'd like to see you on the job. I'd like to see you leading people. And I'd like to just sit back and watch how you do it and see if you're able to bring into play these different leader techniques. 1970. The best-selling book, those in the back will remember, "I'm Okay, You're Okay." That was the name of the book. I'm going to give you 3 different approaches. I'm okay, you're not okay. I'm better than you. Number 2, you're okay, but I'm not. Oh, I wish I was like you. Oh, you've got it together. You're so beautiful, you're so smart, and me, I'm just a big dummy. And so there's I'm okay and you're not. You're okay and I'm not. And the other, I'm okay, you're okay. How are you doing in that regard? Are you better than the person sitting next to you? Do you have skills and talents they don't have? How do you look upon other people? Are you okay and they're not? Do you look down your nose at people? Or are you not okay and they are? Do you go around with envy? Oh, I wish I was more like you. Oh, you've got, Or do you go, hey, I'm okay, and you know what, so are you. But you can see what this was doing to leadership. The leader now had to bring in their sensitivity training into a communication process, mainly focusing on I'm okay, you're okay. And we were introduced to transactional analysis. And in 1970, I went to a course I had never been to, how to listen. Hearing is noise entering your whatever process that is. Listening is hard work. Some of you tuned me out some time back. You're hearing because I'm loud. You're hearing the noise, but are you listening? Are you reflecting? Are you pondering? Are you analyzing and evaluating what I'm saying? Are you taking what I'm saying and doing something with it? Is it rolling around in your brain, or are you thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow or around the golf coming up this weekend? I learned in 1970 there's a big difference between hearing and listening. Some of you are not good listeners. You hear, you can't help but hear, but you don't listen. Listen is hard work. Listen, you have to focus. You have to concentrate. You have to ask yourself, what is that guy saying? Does it make sense? Do I believe what he's saying? Have I ever done that? Am I going to try that? Does that make sense? Listening is hard work. I learned I was a good hearer, but I was a poor listener. I wasn't good at listening. I learned that in 1970. I'm now a good listener. When people talk to me, I listen to it. I don't just hear. I listen. Good leaders listen. They listen to what people are saying. And it'll physically wipe them out, but they become good listeners. There's a definite difference. I wonder if that'll be a part of your leadership. When somebody else talks, are you wondering, when are they going to shut up so I can talk? Would you rather talk or listen? Would you rather talk or hear somebody else talk? Would you rather be up here now or sitting out there? Would you rather be in control or not? That's part of good leader behavior, is the ability to listen and process and analyze and evaluate and listen. We've come a long way from 1950, when the leader could care less about what you were thinking or saying, but only getting things done. We came a long way. And by 1975, we were ready for job enrichment. Job enrichment basically is tuning into the job that people do. Number one, the environment in which the worker works. And number two, the fulfillment they receive. I know some of you take notes, so I'll shut up for a minute if you wish to record, or just take brief. If you think for a moment, the leader is fighting a two-pronged battle. Number one, the environment in which the worker works. You are in a Greystone environment. You are at Schreiner Institute in Kerrville, Texas. This is your environment. Every day you come here to this surround. The environment here is different from environment elsewhere. Go to another college campus, you'd find a different environment. The fulfillment is what the worker receives, what you get out of the program, the fulfillment that you receive, the feelings that you get. It's two separate and different things. We used to only be concerned about this. Put the worker in what you consider to be a good environment and they'll thrive. And we learned that feelings come from a totally different source. There was a guy named Frederick Hertzberg, he's deceased now. Frederick Hertzberg, H-E-R-Z-B-E-R-G, he was a job enrichment guru. And he spoke about the importance of job fulfillment. And leaders, in many cases, weren't ready to hear what he had to say. But here's a comment of transition, if you will. What you have to decide is if you believe that. Happiness is a feeling. Happiness is an emotion. Motivation is action. It's a totally different thing. Matter of fact, you can make a worker so happy they won't do anything. You can put them in the right environment and give them a pleasant surround, and they may not produce at all. And so there's a total difference between the way the person feels about where they work and the actual work that they do. Well, job enrichment came on the scene in 1970 as part of that program. 1975, we were ready for MBO. I doubt if any of you know what MBO does. Some of those in the back do. It was introduced by a guy named Odiorn. The initials stand for Management by Objective. Management by Objective. And if you had been there in 1975, I guarantee you, you would have been introduced to MBO. It was the fad. It was the gimmick. It was the driving force in the work unit. Let me describe how it works. I've got an employee. I'm the supervisor. So I call the employee in January, and I say, I want you to go off and write down the goals you hope to achieve in the coming year. And so Christina goes off and sits down and records the goals she hopes to achieve. Then we meet back and I say, here's the goals I want you to achieve. Let's compare your goals with mine, and then we agree on a contract. Let's agree. Here's the goals I want you to reach. Here's the goals you agree to reach, and we have management by objective. Does that make sense or doesn't it? What's the benefit of it? It gets the worker involved in goal setting. They're no longer my goals. Whose goals are they now? They're our goals. They're our goals. Christina says, well, yeah, my goals are not separate from the boss because we've negotiated a contract. So you can see, once again, I click the button. You can see that it's a program of negotiation. We've come a long way. I don't recall any of my bosses negotiating with me in 1950. The negotiation was much more subtle. The negotiation was, Gaylor, here's what you're going to do this coming year, and I'll get with it. And we came a long way to where we began to manage and negotiate the objectives. And for the first time ever, we introduced conflict management. For the first time ever, we said, conflict is good. Out of conflict comes creativity. Out of conflict comes negotiation. Before, we used to think conflict was bad. There will be no conflict in this unit by order of the commander. Now we're actually talking about how to manage that conflict. So it was a totally different concept. And you can see in 25 years, we had come a long way from do it because I said so to where we're now managing conflicts that arise. By the way, you're putting together a leader style. How are you doing? If I went to work for you in 2025, what could I expect to get from you? You're going to be an autocratic leader? You're going to be the boss? Are you going to be Miss Nice Person where everybody just loves you? Oh, she's the sweetest. Is that you? Are you going to have empathy? Are you going to be a good listener? What kind of a leader do you expect to be? I assume that you want to be a leader. Some of you someday will have kids. You'll be a leader whether you want to be or not. They're called kids. They'll be running around your house. You say, it appears I have kids. What kind of a parent will you be? Will the kid be looking for a transfer? Will they want to go to some other family? Or will they want to stay with you? What have you got to offer? Some of you might be a Navy captain or a colonel. I don't know what you're going to be, neither do you. But I guarantee you'll have a leader style. I just wish I could be around and watch and see what it is. And I want to hear what the people say that work for you. What words will they use to describe you? What will they say? The leader's a good listener. The leader's very fair. The leader's very caring. The leader's a good decision maker. The leader knows how to manage conflict. What will they be saying? Because you and I agreed early on they're effective and they're ineffective leaders. What does the effective leaders do that make them effective? I would guess that they do these things. I don't know what else they do. They do these things in the right way. 1980. By now, I'm working at USAA. I left the Air Force. I went to work at USAA. I get to USAA Insurance in 1980, and they said, Gaylor, one of the programs we want you to manage is employee involvement. What is that? Where any employee can turn in an idea for work improvement. I had never heard of such a thing. Are you saying we're going to solicit ideas from the employees? Yeah. What a new concept. Never heard of that before. I don't remember being asked for my ideas in 1950. But now, and here's the motto. Here's the motto that I had on the form that I developed. The person doing the work knows more about that work than anyone else and is in the best position to improve it. Is that a true statement or isn't it? Does the boss know more than anyone else? Or might the worker know some things about the work the boss doesn't even know? If you believe that, then you say, well, if that be true, we need to tap into that employee thinking. We need to allow them to submit ideas. Oh my gosh, I sit back and I go, I can't believe what's happening. In 30 years, we go from do it because I said so to what are your ideas and what do you think we ought to do? I have a question for you. Do you think everybody widely applauded these changes? I can still hear people saying, there goes the military. We've lost control. The bottom is falling out. This has got to be stupid. You might be sitting there thinking that. You might, as I talk about these things, you might say, well, I don't like that. You may dismiss them. You may say, well, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. I say, okay, you do whatever you think is the right thing to do. I'm trying to help you build yourself into an effective leader position. And the question is, how much flexibility and adaptability might you have in the workplace? We're moving along now. By 1990, we're talking teams. And we're introducing new words. We're talking empowerment, empowering the employee. We're talking about paradigm shift. I remember the first time I heard paradigm. What in heaven's name is a paradigm? Sound like 2 nickels. I don't know. But now we're talking about a new approach to leadership. Getting the worker involved. Allowing the worker to feel part of the process. Tapping into the employee's creativity. Treating them as they should be treated. When authoritarian leadership is needed, use it. When it's not needed, don't use it. That type thing. I'm helping you put together your personal style. We had come a long way. And I was there. I saw all this. And along the way, I went through training. It seemed I was constantly being sent somewhere for some new program. I actually heard Fred Hertzberg talk in Salt Lake City, Utah. I sat at the feet of the master. He was a gruff and grouchy old fella, but what a brilliant man. And I remember thinking, I never heard of this before. This is a new concept. My gosh, I'm interested in this. I want to know more about this. This sounds exciting. This sounds like something I might want to do. I remember getting caught up. I told you about going to the equal opportunity session where, what do you want to talk about? Anything within the room. So here we are. 40, 50 years later. You're going to be a product of all this. You know why? You've been influenced by that. Your mom and dad are somewhere on that chart. What kind of family did you grow up in? Who made the decisions? Who called the shots? Who told you what time to be home at night? Who told you where you could go and what you could do? How much freedom were you given? Were you allowed to think? Were you allowed to create? Did your mom and dad listen to you? Or did they tune you out? How did you feel? What kind of a leader are you going to be? I'm just trying to put it on your mind. Because whether you realize it or not, your aspirations are to become a leader. That's where the money is, by the way. That's where the big bucks are. CEO, CFO, all those fancy titles. Those are people who have apparently demonstrated leader qualities. Unless your granddad owns J.C. Penney, then they'll probably just give it to you. So now here we are. And the question is, where do we go from here? We're up to 2000. We're actually 2014. What's next? Where are we going? Is America coming apart at the seams? Is the country degrading? Are we about to lose it like the Roman Empire? Are we more interested in American Idol than we are national politics? How do you feel about what's going on? Are you taking out citizenship in New Zealand? Yeah, what are you thinking? What are you going to do starting tomorrow? What is your plan? 10 years from now, what do you plan to do? What are you going to do? I would think that along the way, we need people who can do the right things and make the right decisions and call the right shots. Right now, we got a president who's considered to be soft. You could watch television, they say Putin is walking all over him. If you were the president, what would you do? Walk all over Putin? Would you go back to 1950 and say, I'll tell you what, Putin, baby, you do that, here's what would you do? What would be your style? If you were making the decisions, what would you do? Would you try to use sanction? Would you become a listener? Would you try to diplomatically work it out? I'm good at asking questions. I just don't have the answer because I don't know. I'm just helping you put together your style. Here's what you're up against. Here are some things that are obstacles in your path. Number one, 911. You weren't very old when that happened. You were what, 9, 10, 11 years old? I don't know, maybe 8. I don't know what you remember about it. You remember planes crashed into some big buildings? It changed the world. It'll never be the same. The odds are you remember where you were and what you were doing. You probably remember what you said and what you thought. It's indelible. You'll never forget. It's like those of us who were alive when Kennedy was shot. We remember what we were doing, what we were wearing, what we said, what we thought. 911 did that to you. You'll never forget. It changed everything. Now you can't go to an airplane without going through a security process. You used to be able to run to the gate, jump on the plane at the last minute. You used to be able to meet people arriving at the gate and hug them. Now you got to wait in the waiting area as they come through the process. Now you're up against 911 and what it did to us. You also got technology. The odds are you have a device in your pocket that is calling for your attention. You can't wait for the guy to shut up so you can Twitter somebody. You got some device that you now live with. You're mated to it. Some of you are slaves to it. The other day, my grandson sent me a picture of shrimp he'd been served in a seafood restaurant. Am I supposed to be fat? Do you send people pictures of food you've just been served? Who gives a damn? Why do you do that? What do you care? But you got all these devices you play with. You're fascinated by them. And you have fancy terms like Twitter and Google and Uspace and MyFace and HerFace. And you're processing crap. You're just recycling the same old stuff. You send somebody something, they send it back to you with their thought. And so we've lost the art of thinking. Some of you don't know how to think. You don't think. I asked a group the other day, what's 11 times 11? And nobody knew. I knew that in the 3rd grade. Some of you don't know what 11 times 11 is, unless you get out your computer and say, it's 121. If you go south out of Atlanta, where do you hit South America? And you say, I have no idea. Let me look on my device, it'll tell me. Most of you think you run into the East Coast. Believe it or not, all of South America is east of Atlanta. It's over here. You didn't even know that. You saw it in South America, straight up. You don't think. You don't think anything. You don't allow somebody else to think for you. What do you think about when you're showering? What do you think about when you're driving by yourself? What do you think about when you can't go to sleep at night? You know what I do? I pick out a year. I just pick out a year in 1967. And then I ask myself, what did I do that year? Where was I? What do I remember? How old was I? What was I doing? Did I umpire baseball? How How old were my kids? I force myself to think. I go to sleep thinking. Some of you say, well, that sounds stupid. I go to sleep looking at a gadget. I send somebody, I'm about to go to sleep now. They say, okay, call me first thing in the morning. Okay, bye, 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 bye. Do with that what you want. I'm just telling you what you're up against. I'm throwing cold water in your face. I'm a touch of reality. I'll be 84 years old. Man, I've been there, done that. I can't think of anything you can do that I haven't heard of. I've heard all the jokes. I know all the dirty words. I know all that stuff. And I also know more answers to Jeopardy than you probably do because I think. And you say, I'll look that up on my computer. I'm being harsh just to get your attention. What did I do? You're up against an economic downturn. Are you aware we have a shortage of resources? Are you aware that the military right now is going through a downsizing and a shortage of money? Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. I just wrote a check to IRS yesterday. I flew the flag at half staff. It killed me. It absolutely mutilated me. I wrote a check. This was in addition to what I'd already paid for $6,196. That hurt. I can't afford to give that kind of money away, but that's what I did yesterday morning. I mailed it to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so that's called economic downturn, where resources are going down and income is going down and the government requirement is going up. Educated workforce. You're surrounded by that. You know, I'm going to tell you something. This is sort of cute. When I became a supervisor in 1950, most of the people who worked for me were dummies. And I use that lovingly. Some of them had never finished high school. And so when one of them would come to me and say they had a problem, you know what I'd say to them? It's not your day to have a problem. When it's your turn to have a problem, I'll post it on the bulletin board. And you know what they'd usually say? Thank you, I thought I had a problem. I'll just let it go. You try that now. You go in to see your facilitator and say, I'm having a problem, and I hope they say, it's not your day to have a problem. And you say, oh, thank you, I thought I did. Yeah, you're going to say, you got to be kidding me. Who else can I talk to? I have a problem. If you don't want to help it, I want to talk to your supervisor. And so you're dealing with an educated workforce. Is much more difficult to lead than a bunch of dummies. Yeah, and again, I use that lovingly because I was probably one of the dummies. But it's a different ball game now. And you got a shift in ethical behavior. If you're not careful, somebody will put their hand in your pocket while you're standing there. A guy named Bernie Madoff. You ever heard that name? Yeah. Invest your money with me. You know where he is now? He's in prison for the rest of his life. He ripped off millions of dollars. You read every day in the paper. There's a different ethic. Totally different ethic. I would almost suggest some of you may not be 100% ethical. Now the belief is get it before somebody gets yours. What's the big deal? Take it while the getting is good. It'll be interesting to watch you go through life and to see if any of you enter into unethical conduct. Hopefully the program here will help dissuade you against that. Ethics is a commodity. There's a shortage of it in America. Every day you read about key people ripping people off. The pastor of the church, the superintendent of the school arrested for child pornography. It's in the paper today. There seems to be an absence of ethical behavior. Have you even defined ethics? What is it? Do you have it? Where'd you get it? How do you know you have it? How often do you practice it? Do you have ethics till noon and then not the rest of the day? Or do you have it all the time? Interesting, isn't it? This is what you're a part of. I hope you find it very exciting. It is exciting. I paint a scary picture, but it's not scary at all. It's the opposite. It's exciting. I would not trade places with you. You're obviously younger than me. Your life is ahead of you, mine for the most part is behind me, but I wouldn't swap with you. Because I enjoyed all this. Everything I showed you, I lived. You didn't get to live it. You're living it vicariously through me. I'm sharing with you. Whether or not you comprehend it and understand it and accept it, that's up to you. The ball's in your court, the next move is yours. I would assume most of you are aspiring to something greater. Mr. Parks is going to the Air Force Academy here soon. Many of you will go to the Navy Academy, the Merchant Marine Academy, West Point, Annapolis. I don't know where you're going, you may not either. But as you go there and as you live that, you're going to be developing a leader style. I'm simply asking, what do you expect that style to be? In a nutshell, I would hope that you would be decisive, fair, a good listener, humane, caring, allowing others to be involved. I would hope that you would somehow put together a style that would cause people who work for you to say, wow, what a great leader. I recently flew into Baltimore on my way to Dover, Delaware. And the driver, we're driving along on Highway 301, and he said to me, I can't wait for you to meet my vice commander. He's the greatest leader I've ever worked for. Really? Why do you say that? In what way is he a great leader? And he looked at me like, well, that's sort of a stupid question. I said, no, why do you say he's a great leader? What is it he does that makes you say that? Well, he said he's very fair. He's a good listener. He said, when I go into his office, he stops and listens. He asks the right questions. He cares about me and my progress. He talks with me about education, getting ahead, getting promoted. He does all those things? He said, yeah, he sounds like a great leader. Isn't that amazing that some people will voluntarily offer that information, that my leader is a great leader? It'll be interesting to see what they say about you. I guess I gave this talk to a group of recruiters. Enough. The floor is open. Ask me something. I've got answers I've never used. Yeah, this is a lot of stuff, and it goes pretty quick. It's a pretty good gadget, ticking the clock. What are you thinking while I'm talking?
Grant Parks, what's your favorite leadership style?
I think a blend or a combination. You know, I can only answer in a personal way. I look back at my personal transition. I was taught as an autocratic leader. I remember thinking someday I'm going to have stripes and I get to tell people what to do. I couldn't wait for that opportunity. But then as I began to study leadership and I was subjected to training, these other techniques that I've shared with you came into my mind. And I had to answer the question, do I accept that? Would I like to make that part of my style? Do I believe that? And when I studied Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, I thought, you know, that makes sense. I know how I feel when somebody recognizes something I do. And so I was able to accept it as being factual. And so as these techniques became available, I had to ask myself, am I willing and able to make the adaptation, the adjustment? And in many cases I was. That sensitivity training, I think it actually made me more sensitive. I had never ever thought about walking a mile in another person's moccasins. I never asked myself, what's it like to be a black person growing up in the South? I had never asked myself that. It sort of caused me to ask that. And my answer was, I'm not sure. But it appears there were obstacles and difficulties. And so I think over the years I became a better leader. And now you're looking for proof, right? You got to have reinforcement. You need some feedback. Am I right? Everybody needs feedback. And so I go to Thailand in 1967 for a year. And I'm the top enlisted cop. I'm a cop. And I had basically the same workers for most of the year I was there. And the day before I left, I knock on my door, and here stood all 6 of them. And I look up, and here's my 6 employees. And I said, "What do you want?" And they said, "Can we come in?" And I said, "Sure. Come on in." And they said, "You're leaving tomorrow, Chief." That's right. And the guy had something behind his back, and he brought out a Billy Casper putter, golf putter. And it's inscribed. I have it at home. Come by, I'll show you. And it says, "To the best leader we have ever worked for." That'll bring a lump to your throat. First, it was unexpected. And they had pulled money together and had it inscribed. Is that money in the bank or isn't it? You're flying home, what are you thinking? A year well spent. Just that simple act. You say, "Come on, big deal." So they gave you a putter. Yeah, but the inscription. To the best leader we ever worked for. And what do you say to yourself? I must be doing something right. Now go ask my kids. Yeah, 2 of them live in San Antonio. I'll give you their name and I call them. What kind of a dad is he? Go ahead, ask them. I don't know what they'll say. They might say he was a curmudgeon. He was mean. I didn't like him. I don't know. I don't think they will. I think they'll say he was my dad. He was a great dad. Does that mean I was perfect? No. Nor will you ever be. But you get as close to it as you can. And you get that feedback. And you need that. How am I doing? And it comes when you least expect it. When somebody knocks on your door and says, "Can we come in?" Say, "Sure, what is it you want?" "Well, we've got something for you. Here's a putter. And please read the inscription." And you try to suppress a tear coming down your cheek. Because those are special moments. And they don't happen very often. And when they do, you go, "Wow, I must have done something right." So it's a combination of putting together a style that you consciously feel is the best style that you have to offer. Then you go from there. And then with feedback, you make the necessary adjustments. Good question. Yes.
Drew Julius, sir, were you ever disappointed in the trend of leadership style? And then what did you do with that frustration or disappointment?
Yeah, I was disappointed. Mostly, you know what disappointed me? The overdoing of a style. The violation of the concept of the style. For example, the sensitivity training. I thought it was good training. The idea was to sensitize the person to the feelings and needs of others, okay? Some people got carried away with it. Some people went bananas. I went to one session, and the guy brings out a block of cheese and a couple of big tomatoes and a loaf of bread. And there were about 12 of us, and he said, "Here's your noon meal. Where's the utensils? You don't have one. You pass this around and break off a piece of cheese, squish the tomato and suck it, break off a piece of bread." You go, "You've got to be kidding, this is unsanitary." But some people, so some people abused the concept. They got so carried away with it that they went bonkers with it. Instead of using the concept appropriately and training it as it was meant to be trained, they went crazy with it. And that always bothered me. You go, "Whoa, that wasn't the intent." And so if you're not in a position to do anything about that violation, you just ride with it. But in my case, I had enough authority to where I could say, "We're not going to do that. That's not the intent." And so you adjust and adapt based on your position, the authority you have, and how you feel about whatever's happening. That's another good question. Yeah, I saw violations of almost all of these techniques somewhere along the way.
Tony White, sir. You had a question mark on 2000. Do you feel that there's already been a leadership style that's already been established for this generation?
Yeah, and yes, I think it's already happening. I put the question mark at 2000 because I ran out of ticks on the clock. I needed a 70-minute clock, but I had to stop somewhere, and you caught it. Yeah, it's already happening. I left USA in 1995, so I've been retired, what is that, 19 years. My daughter works there, and my grandson works there, and my other grandson is starting 31 March. It's interesting now to hear them talk of the leadership they're now receiving and how it's changed in the 19 years since I left. And so my concern is that it might be going a little too overboard in reaching out to the employees. I think there's a limit. Gosh, can I think of an example? They now have a lounge room with recliners where you can go nap for 20 minutes. I used to do that at the desk when the boss wasn't looking. I learned how to nap and not get caught. Now they have recliner. Is that good or bad? Is that going too far? Where do we stop? Does the boss go to the home and do a massage every morning at 7? I don't know. Would you like that for your boss to come by and walk on your back? In other words, the question is, where do we draw the line? And I'm going to tell you something. There's a fine line between strength and weakness. I would suggest that your leader strength is potentially your leader weakness. I'll give you an example. I'm a funny guy. I am naturally funny. I am funny. I have always been the life of the party. When I arrive at a party, people, oh, Bob's here. Let the fun begin. I'm a funny guy. I'm quick-witted. I think of quips you'll never think of. I could have been a comedy writer. I'm not bragging. I'm defining my style. Okay, so now I'm at the party. And my strength is to do what? To entertain. Everybody has a good time because Bob is here. So a guy says, I got a dog for my wife. I said, I've met her. You made a good swap. That is funny. That is funny. Most of you would never think of that. I thought of it that quick. I could not suppress it. It came out. Okay, so now, the question I ask you, was when Bob said that, was he funny? Yes. Did he cross the line of propriety? How many of you say yes? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Pretty close. Should he have said it or shouldn't he have? If he had it all to do over, would he say it? Now, Bob's riding home with his wife. And she says, you owe some people an apology. For what? For what you said. Give me an example. A guy said he got a dog for his wife. You said, I've met her, you made a good swap. I said it was a big laugh of the evening. She said it was inappropriate. I said, but they laughed. She said, I don't care, you shouldn't have said it. Now who's right and who's wrong? I don't know. You have to decide. And so here we have a clash of behavior. Have you ever had that with anyone? Well, sure. Who's right? Are you always right? Are you okay and they're not? Do you go through life saying, you shouldn't have done that. You were wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. If you'd listen to me, is that you? Well, good luck. People will avoid you. You'll have to buy them donuts to have them sit with you. I don't know. That's something the individual has to define. That's called behavior. A clash of style. What is effective leadership? It's when the recipients perceive it as being effective. The right thing at the right time. And that's the challenge I give to you. This guy said, I'm having a cocktail. and I heard this guy behind me mention Arkansas. I turned, I said, Arkansas? The only thing I've ever seen come out of Arkansas is good football players and loose women. He says, I resent that. I married a girl from Arkansas. I said, what position did she play? That's funny. That's funny. Is it appropriate? Well, I have to live with that. I have to put up with that. What I don't know is how it comes across to others. So we're riding home, and guess what my wife said? Don't say that again. Okay, I won't when you're with me. Come on. And I'm talking about me, but you're saddled with the same thing. You're stuck with you. You don't have any choice. You got to live the rest of your life with you. How do you feel about that? What kind of a deal is that? Are you pleased with that? And how will others perceive it? That's the key. Unless you go live in a cave, then you just have to put up with yourself. So what I've tried, back to the question you asked, I've tried to temper. I say, okay, Bob, is the laugh more important than appropriate behavior? And sometimes you say, no, the appropriate behavior is more important. So you stop using stuff you used to use. You just remember, you use it as examples when you talk at Greystone. But you no longer do that. So that's called adjusting. I assume you'll be doing some of that. You'll be a different person 20 years from now than you are now. In either a positive or a negative way. But what you're up against are those things I talked to you about. Boy, these are compelling. And so I just think that as a closure, what you got to do is, here's your keys. Boy, here they are. This is the best I have to offer. Focus on your role as a leader. Humility, common sense. My gosh, there's a shortage of that. I assume you have some of it. Balance, integrity, and be yourself. I don't know any other stuff. I'll ask you a question. Do you like you? I like Bob Gaylor. I really do. Bob Gaylor is one of my favorite people. I've known him 83 plus years. I know his weaknesses. I know his shortcomings. I'm well aware of them. I know them better than anyone. Usually when people point out a shortcoming, I already know that. The question is, do I wish to do something about it? Make it a long coming. I like Bob Gaylor. Do you like you? If you don't, how can you expect anyone else to like you? If you don't like yourself, why would I like you? You have a right to like yourself. But it takes some of these. You got to have humility. He told you they named an academy after me. My name is on an academy at Lackland, the Robert D. Gaylor Academy. Whoa! And so I go out to Lackland to visit basic training. I'm introduced to a flight of young basic trainees, and when they said, "Do you realize who this is? This is the 15th Master Sergeant of the Air Force," a kid said, "I thought you were dead." That's funny. I love it. What would you do? Wow, do you realize, I mean, do you pound your chest like an ape in the jungle? Who are you? I have humility. They named a suite at Ramstein, Germany after me. The girl said, "Did you enjoy your stay?" I said, "I'm surprised they didn't put me in the Gaylor suite. It was named after me." She said, "Yeah, sure." She wasn't impressed. I think that's funny. I have humility. My feet are flat on the ground. I like Bob Gaylor. I know my shortcomings. The question is, what have I done about them? I quit saying what position they should play. You find a different way to make your point. I have no idea what time it is. I never wear a watch. I'm retired. I'm not supposed to be in a hurry. I don't be with you. I'd stay all night. You're my kind of people. I come on pretty strong. I know that. But I do it just to stimulate. I'm a provocateur. I provoke. I just love to provoke. I'll say anything to make you angry. If you say to me, I didn't like what you said, I'd shake your head and say, thank you. That was my intent. Just to get you to think about who you are and what you are and what you want to be and what you're going to be. I have a feeling you're going to be great. How many of you know Howlett? I flew to Denver, and believe it or not, he got on the airplane and the seat was empty beside me, and we flew to Denver together, and I had a chance to talk with him. Like you, he's a very bright young person with a great future. You have a great future. There are a lot of doors out there with your name on it. You know the tough part? You don't know what they are. And you don't know when they'll open. You have no idea. Some of the greatest things that are going to happen to you, you don't even know about now. They're just waiting. They're just waiting for you to come by. But you better have your act together. And to have your act together, you got to have these ingredients. You got to have a leader style that people perceive as being effective. I'll stick around for a minute if you have something you want to talk about. You're always very attentive. I love coming out here. The nice thing about this group, and David was telling me, is that the group turns over, so I can go back next year and recycle my material. It's harder to find a new audience than it is to get new material. If invited, I'll come back. Good luck to you in whatever you choose to do.
Most of you are afraid to ask him the questions that you have, so I understand that because you're all children. If you have a question, no kidding, this is your chance to ask. If you're still afraid, we're going to have a little reception over there in the conference room. And of course, you're invited to come over and introduce yourselves. But I've got to tell you, I was born in the 50s, late 50s, and I remember my leadership upbringing, and when I am able to see it, how it has evolved, it makes a lot more sense than as I was living in the trenches day in and day out. And you've put it all together, and I just wish when I was their age, I was able to hear something like this from a person like you, because that would help me to become a better leader. Because right now, I'm still that authoritarian, get the job done, and don't come down until I tell you.
Well, but I know you quite well, and you also have a lot of those.
Not much.
Well, you just.
Someday after I'm gone, you can ask them what kind of leader I was. Well, actually, it should be better because the colonel's a better leader than I am, because he's more effective. He's an Army guy. You know how those Army guys are. Like a club.
I'm glad they're on our side.
They more like a club of yachts. So
I'm kind of stuck in 1950.
but for the last few years, when you come here, we've been able to give you things that we have. Well, we're out of those things. You've gotten the polo shirt, you've gotten the cool coin. We ain't got no more. So I've got to have you keep coming here. So what we've done is I've got a couple of little gift cards for you.
Well, thank you.
Because your cohort in crime, Colonel Howlett, he loves cheddars. So what we've done
I
is
like
gotten you.
cheddar.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.